In terms of my reflections on the opportunities that I see for innovation, I'm going to focus on the industries in the creative economy that I enjoy the most, which is fashion, music, and film. I'm not going to talk about NFTs or Bitcoin or Web3. If that's why you're listening to me, tune off now. Someone else, I'm sure, in the series will have more insight on that. I'm still learning a lot about that. I'm firmly first generation millennial, so I'm still learning, so I'm still behind there. So I'll start with immersive technology, mixed reality, augmented reality. It's definitely huge. Virtual is definitely huge in fashion. And it's a growing industry. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen more and more people in the fashion industry and more companies start taking advantage of it. A good example is a fashion designer in the US, Hanifa, who's Congolese, Congolese American, grew up in Congo and moved to the US as a kid. In the middle of the pandemic, during Fashion Week, she decided to have a 3D virtual fashion show. You would assume that this is something that's been done by many people before, but I don't actually think that a lot of people are taking advantage of this technology to immerse their clothing into a 3D format in a black screen and just have them walking like ghosts. It was very timely. It was in the middle of a pandemic. People couldn't go to shows. And people needed to be able to, people didn't stop shopping. That was one of the consistent things during Fashion Week. And they were able to see what the clothes looked like in 3D format. And it was all the rage at the time that she did it. Unfortunately, I haven't seen more people continue to do that per se since that trend started. But I do think that it's something, particularly in Africa, that we should be taking advantage of, because let's face it, fashion shows are expensive to pull off for designers, pulling out collections, paying for models. Of course, that's an entire industry on its own. But with someone with a limited budget, going virtual might probably be an easier way to be consistent in showing their collections. Another thing which we're seeing now a lot is live shopping. Believe it or not, live shopping is not a new concept, right? So if you were around in the 70s or the 80s, you'll remember QVC shopping on TV, where people are holding an item and telling you, oh, look, this bottle of water is Donna Karen, and have people call in and try to buy it. And we're seeing in the last 2 years, it's kind of coming back again. So apparently it's generated about $5.6 billion in the US in 2020. Now, in Africa, live shopping is something that I think a lot of people informally do via Instagram Live, where a lot of vendors are wearing their clothing and dancing and encouraging people to shop via DM. So it has been going on and it's a growing trend. But I think as we see it generating more and more revenue in the West and in China, I think that it's going to become a stronger feature here in Africa as well. Why is it beneficial? You don't need to have a store. Consumers in Africa like to be able to see what they're buying because they don't necessarily trust the online experience of going on a website and looking at a piece of clothing. So when you can see someone model something on Instagram and they can answer your questions directly before you shop, and you can easily interact with them via your DM or take the experience to WhatsApp while watching the video, it will definitely encourage that industry to grow. And that's definitely one technology that I would like to see more African fashion retail businesses or even products just take advantage of. Another immersive technology, which is quite key in the fashion industry, and it's a growing trend, is being able to try clothes in AR. We see a lot of it now, particularly for more bulky looking coat type of clothing, but it's beginning to happen and it's growing stronger and stronger. We're seeing a lot of people getting, well, at least 2 companies have received funding to be able to build out this immersive AR, augmented reality sort of technology to try out clothing. I think that in Nigeria, Nigeria and Africa as a whole, we're still kind of far off from that. But I have come across someone a couple of years ago on Twitter called, I believe it was called Astra as a business. And this was what they were trying to do. They were trying to bring gaming, crypto, and also immersive technology and augmented reality to fashion. I don't know what the state of this company is now. It's been a while since I've been active on Twitter, but perhaps I'll sign in and look for them. But they were talking about the metaverse way before a company named themselves Meta. So you can see that we are kind of on the cusp of leading these emerging technologies here in Africa. So I'll move on to music. Music streaming has changed the way we consume music. Technology has grown immensely for music. I mean, growing up, I had a Walkman. And I remember whenever I went on holiday, it was all about what was the latest Walkman to buy in the stores, the headphones, and then eventually became a Discman. And now it's Spotify and Apple. But let's look at the beginning of this year, where recording artist Kanye West decided to take control of how his music was streamed, right? And he created what was called a stem player, which essentially, if you are familiar with the Walkman, or if you're younger, this is a new concept to you because it's, I would say, a bit like an iPod, but essentially it's a round little disc, which is a bit fleshy to touch. And its main selling point is that you can isolate beats on it. You can mix the vocals. You can just sample it and add different effects to it. And he decided to release his music exclusively on this player. It was $200. It is $200 to buy, slightly expensive. But I think the key takeaway here is that an artist is taking control of how his music is being distributed, and as a result is beginning to reap those benefits. Kanye claims he made over $2.2 million in sales in just one day. How will this apply to us here in Africa? I do think that there are many lessons we can learn here in terms of thinking more creatively as to how we can own our own distribution platforms and how we can make revenue from that. I know a lot of artists are now on Spotify and Apple, and I use these two streaming platforms a lot. It's a great way to be accessible to a wider audience. So perhaps still far along the line for us to be thinking of taking advantage of creating our own special technology for music to be consumed, but definitely something to think about, especially when you look at the amount of revenue he's making from it. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is how the creative economy and the platform economy are merging together, right? So it's now redefined the relationship between a creator, between a publisher and a technology company. Essentially, anybody can have their own distribution platform. All you need to do is to go on YouTube and create the Rimini show, right? And have my own audience. Essentially, that's kind of what I'm doing now. Hi, everyone, welcome to my show. So that as well is one of the key benefits for how technology has changed the way content is distributed. A good example of this is a company, I would say, like xCloud, who is a platform, a publisher, but at the same time, they are a content creator as well, right? I enjoy a lot of their articles. I enjoy their memes. I follow them on Instagram, and I still go to their platform at the same time to read some of those interesting human pieces that they create and they write. The second half of your question is, how are Africans leveraging these opportunities? I do think, for example, when we come to film, so I'll move to film there, technology has democratized filmmaking. You don't need to have a big budget. You don't need to have a huge studio backing you. Literally, all you need is a device. And with your device, you can edit films. In essence, you can become a filmmaker once you use Instagram Reels or TikTok, because it has rudimentary editing software. So by the very definition, if you've ever made a TikTok video, if you've ever made an Instagram reel, you qualify as a filmmaker. And this is such a wonderful thing that tech has done. And how have I seen it working and giving opportunities in Africa? The examples are, we see them every day, right? The boys from Kaduna, the critics that rule, using just very rudimentary software and devices, they were able to get the attention of J.J. Abrams, who was the director of Star Wars and Lost, and also produced Westworld. That's huge. The Ikorodu boys here in Lagos, who were also at the Oscars, their skits are pretty popular. Everyone enjoys that content. And they featured at the Oscars. And all of this is because of how technology has democratized filmmaking. And finally, I think, how are we on time? Am I still under 10 minutes?
Yeah, you can round up, it's fine.
Okay. Finally, from a gaming perspective, the work that I do is I work for xCloud, which is essentially cloud gaming, Xbox cloud gaming. And we are taking the console experience and moving it to the device. Africa is hugely mobile led. And for cloud gaming, this is a huge opportunity. In a 2021 study commissioned by Newzoo, we've seen that the rise of gaming in Africa is phenomenal. We've risen to about 186 million gamers. This is up from 77 million in 2015. African Games Week just held in Cape Town last month. And from it, there was a coalition of African gaming publishers and content creators called the Pan-African Gaming Group, I believe. And they are going to be a coalition of African countries and gamers who want to take charge of growing the gaming industry by double every year. So there's definitely an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to create more relevant African content. Research has shown, though, that a lot of the content that we create in gaming in Africa mimics Western gaming content. So we're not necessarily creating indigenous games in our storytelling. And there's a huge opportunity there to create content which Africans will resonate with Africans and we will enjoy. But not just that, we would be able to export these stories to platforms like ours and others. I am seeing a lot of interest in Africa, not just from Xbox. We've just recently hired African manager for Xbox. A person sits out of Nigeria. I've also seen NVIDIA is doing the same as well. They've hired someone to manage Africa. And when things like this start happening, it means that you're going to see more and more multinational players coming into the ecosystem to work together with the local players to grow the industry. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.